guest in this segment is Financial Phil McCoy from Ameriprise Financial and the Marius Group of Financial Advisors, Winchester Avenue, Martinsburg. Good morning, Philly.
Good morning, guys. How are you all?
We are very well, Phil, and yourself.
I am living the dream, Rob.
I understand you and I shared something in common on Saturday. We did a little day of yard work.
We did yard work at the same exact time. I'm sure mine wasn't as thorough as yours, but I did my best, Rob. I'm living up to a standard that I'm afraid I can't meet.
Well, did you already have your graduation party?
No, we have not had the graduation party yet. That's not until June, so I've got a lot of work to do.
Oh, okay. Well, is the yard looking tip-top?
It's about as tip-top as mine's going to look, unless maybe the Green Thumb Rob Mario would like to come down and help Bunker Hill. Financial Phil from Bunker Hill clean his yard out.
Well, you just let me know when I need to drop by, Phil.
Mrs. McCoy's a really good cook. I'm sure she'd make you some dinner, and you could eat, and then we'll go out and work in the yard. We'll have it all taken care of.
You want to work in the yard after dinner? I'm going to bed.
You're not Italian.
I'll leave that to you. I'll leave that up to you. I did watch that movie you suggested I watch, so Nona.
Nona's. Oh, yeah. What did you think?
I thought it was a good movie. It was a little drawn out, but I thought it was a good movie. It was a good movie.
Yeah.
Good story. It was a true story, too, correct?
Yeah, based on a true story. Yeah, they're in Staten Island.
I've always liked Vince Vaughn. He did a good job. It's one of the first times I've seen him in something that wasn't really a comedy. So I thought he did a good job there.
Yeah, he was reserved more so in that movie. Now, he did a season of True Detective, season 2, and it's widely regarded as the worst season of True Detective, which was a pretty good series. It was pretty intense there, and had some pretty good actors involved in it as well. But the first time I ever saw him in a movie was Rudy. Do you remember the movie Rudy?
Yes. Rudy Rudiker, one of my favorite movies. Yes.
Ages ago.
What role did he play?
He was a kind of a backup.
He was a quarterback. Yeah, like backup quarterback, third-string quarterback, something like that. Maybe I don't know.
I think it was a backup running back or something. But either way, he was a backup player who had a bit of an attitude problem. In the end, he was like, "Hey, we gotta do this so Rudy can get in the game."
Stand up for Rudy.
Right. So he was very young. I think he was only 21, 22 years old in that movie. Right?
I didn't realize that was him until after Old School movie. I made my children watch Rudy, and then I realized I was like, "Hey, that's Vince Vaughn."
Old School is just a classic. That's one of those movies where if it's on, I'm watching it. I'm not going to miss Old School, especially when Will Ferrell goes streaking through the city. Everyone's doing it. Phil, we've got a credit downgrade. The rating from Moody's has thrown the markets into a bit of a tailspin this morning. What's the story there?
I think it's more of an excuse than it is an actual reason for the market to sell off like it has overnight. It's recovered a little bit overnight. That's the third time that our credit rating has been cut, the United States credit rating, the first being 2011, and that had a major impact. Actually happened in August of 23 as well. Now, the third credit rating cut was after the close on Friday, and I saw that, and quite honestly didn't think much of it because they hadn't reduced their credit rating yet. But if you think of it on a personal standpoint, most of us understand personal credit, where our country has credit just like a person. I don't know that we apply a score, but it's whether it's excellent or poor. And the better our country's credit rating is, the more secure our debt appears and the lower rate we can offer. So if you have a worse credit rating, then our debt's not as attractive. So think from a personal standpoint, if you're buying a car or buying a home and they look at your credit and they say, "Oh boy, you've got too much debt." I don't know, man, you just keep piling up debt. You paid your bills, everything's paid, and it looks good, but I'm concerned about that debt, so I'm going to bump your rate just a little bit because I'm taking more of a risk. That's kind of what goes on with these credit rating systems as well. So it's caused our bond yields to go up, and it has the same impact as if the Federal Reserve were to threaten or to actually increase the interest rates. And there go our ignition to sell off what was a really good run last week. Most people think this is very short-lived and just an example because it's still on an excellent credit rating scale. by Moody's, and all three credit rating agencies were still very, very, very high up there, so very quality credit for the country. But it is a slight downgrade, and the reasons they pointed to is the same reasons the last two, was our country's debt, our continued country's debt, and not a lot of confidence that they're coming up with a payment plan, if you will, to pay that debt off. But it does have an impact on our equity markets, just the same as if we are fearful that the Federal Reserve would increase rates.
By the way, Phil, Eric O'Rourke is calling us all out on our Rudy recap. He said he was a defensive end. You guys must have watched it in college. Eric, he was in the offensive huddle when they scored on that pass at the end of the, the end of the game.
Go back and watch that. I thought in his background was his father was pressuring him.
Yeah.
So he was kind of like a legacy at Notre Dame. His father pressured him, and he never reached his full potential. But he had the ear of the locker room. So when he kind of turned to the good side for Rudy, everybody tended to follow him, even though he wasn't that good of a player. Yeah. He had the ear of the locker room. I'm not going to argue with Eric about his position, but he was like a backup player of some sort.
Yeah, if you search it, it says he was Jamie O'Hara, third-string tailback. As far as I know, Eric.
There you go. You were correct. I said quarterback.
I do coach high school football. As far as I know, in my position group, which includes tailbacks, I don't have any defensive ends. And when we huddle, there aren't any defensive ends in our huddle. There are tailbacks, though, in our offensive huddle.
You're calling Eric out, are you, Rob?
Well, he called us out, so I'm just returning the favor. I'm just putting that one right back in his lap. Served back across, Eric. The next return is yours.
Let's go to the guy that really knows football, John Gilstrap. What was it, John?
Sports ball.
I'm sorry. Were you saying something, Bill?
Back to money, Philip. Yeah. So the House is working on a budget now, and it looks like they've made progress. There were 5 Republicans who weren't going to vote for it at one point, and now are. This is the one big beautiful bill, which Larry
they passed. They passed. They did not vote for it. They just passed.
Larry Schultz suggested we change your nickname to One Big Beautiful Bill Stubblefield. What do you think about that?
I didn't like that.
You didn't like that too much. Yeah. So if they get this through, and the speaker said they're cutting more spending probably than at any time in the history of the federal government. I don't know if that's accurate or not. That's just kind of a.
That's not what Wall Street Journal said.
I assume somebody would disagree,
that's right.
But this is what the speaker is saying. Would that, if it's true, cause the ratings companies to rethink what their rating is?
Well, the whole debate, and there is a grand debate on this topic. With tax cuts comes reduced revenue, and if we're going to have reduced revenue, we also need reduced spending, and the output of what the plans are debated. So, you've got one side saying, hey, if we cut taxes, we'll spend more and take in more on consumption tax or sales tax, and then we're also going to cut this type of spending, and then you've got some economists that read this and say, hey, no, this is going to add to our national debt. And you also have the tariffs, and there's a lot of uncertainty around the tariffs, which would be increased revenue with the tariffs, and how much will that bring in. Then on the flip side to that, there's a debate on all of these topics, none of which I have an opinion. But if you have these tariffs, will it then slow down our consumption and really offset by the less consumption tax or sales tax? Those aren't one and the same. I keep using them as such, though. But so there is a huge debate on that, and that's part of what the credit rating agency pointed to was the uncertainty of incoming revenue in this tax bill. And don't get me, I'm just like everyone else. I don't like taxes, but you have to have revenue if you're going to pay down debt, and the credit rating systems are saying, hey, you're not creating enough revenue to actually pay down this debt. Again, put it on a personal level, it would almost be the same as if we, a family incurred a bunch of debt, and then one of the mom or dad said, I'm going to take a job that makes less money, or I'm not going to work as much as what I was before, so I'm not going to earn as much. And you would have to wonder how in the world are they going to pay down this debt with decreased revenue, and that's exactly what the credit rating system is pointing to.
Let's talk about the indices, Bill, that had been bouncing back a bit. We always talk about the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ. What about the Russell, the small cap Russell 2000? How's that been doing?
It has trailed, and it has had a bounce back, but nowhere near what the large company indices have done. And that's one that gets ignored quite a bit, and it has underperformed a great deal of late. And one of the reasons being is because high interest rates impact those smaller companies more so than they do the large companies. So if you would compare an Apple to maybe a small regional company, and make no mistake, what's inside of those small caps, a lot of those names you would recognize. You would see them. It's like, yeah, I know that company. I can't believe they're considered a small company. But in a lot of cases, they're regional, so you might not recognize them on the other side of the country, but they rely more on debt than what large companies would. I remember there was a story about how much cash Apple had, and therefore they could make it through if there was an increase in rates. But companies borrow money just like individuals do. I keep comparing this to personal finance because people understand it. But even if you are a very healthy economic household, in some cases you rely on debt. You most likely you still have if you're in your 30s or 40s, you have a mortgage on your house, hopefully not on your cars, but you may have loans on your cars as well. You may be borrowing money for your children to go to school and the likes, and the higher the interest rates are, the more that impacts you when you go to do that. So it has a higher impact on small companies opposed to large companies. So therefore, it's been a little bit more difficult for them to recover, for the industry to recover, than it has for the larger companies.
So until we start cutting rates, the Russell 2000 will probably lag?
Or the perception of that. So and there'll be huge jumps in those indices when we think that there's a rate cut on the horizon. It will probably preclude their actual rate cut. The indices will leap when it's anticipated, or certainly if it's a certainty that they're going to be cut, and that'll be based off economic data. But if that's a certainty, then that would be one of the indices that would take the biggest jump.
What I find remarkable about this Moody's cut, we jumped from AAA to A1 because, in part, they project that our national debt is going to rise from 98% of GDP, which apparently is okay, to 108% of GDP over the course of the next decade. These numbers are astonishing, and by the way, according to Wall Street Journal, the budget is according to Wall Street Journal will increase budget deficits by only $3 trillion over the next decade. So,
well, it would be up to 37, 38, 39 trillion.
It doesn't matter. There comes a point that the number is just, it's kind of silly.
It's not paying it back anyway. Yeah. Right?
Well, I think what they're saying is it does matter to some extent, because you're not working on the debt. So instead of going down $3 trillion, you're going up $3 trillion. And when you look at that difference, that's $6 trillion, right? And it does start to matter. And eventually, according to them, and I'm not the one, this did bring up a question for me that I didn't find a good answer for. Maybe someone else knows it, but when they're looking at this, it's like, when is enough enough? So maybe, again, compared to personal finance, you've got a credit card with $10,000 on it, and everything's hunky-dory, but finally you go and bought another TV, and your credit card company starts sending you a letter saying, hey, man, you're maxed this stuff out. We're going to cut your credit limit. It's just almost like the straw that broke the camel's back. So on your point, it is a straw in the grand scheme of things, but it appears to be the one that broke the camel's back. A question this brought up to me is there a timeline when these credit agencies look and say, hey, we're going to judge your credit? And that's something I couldn't find. Is that just something that they continually do? And I don't know this answer. I want to find it before day's end. I bet John knows. But is it something that they just continually monitor, and then it's okay, now we're going to do it? Or is there a period during the year that they say, okay, we're going to take a snapshot and then judge these countries or judge these companies based off of this snapshot at this time? And that was something I couldn't really find. Google couldn't help me with that. So I'm going to find that answer later. But I don't know the timing of this, because I think the timing of this will be questioned as well, as while there's a debate going on about the big, beautiful bill.
You keep saying the straw that broke the camel's back, and we can look at this from several perspectives. One which way we can look at it are within the House of Representatives themselves and the Freedom Caucus. And these folks have said they've made it a point of principle, saying we've got to curb our spending. Yet they're not doing it now. They had the opportunity last night, and they chose to, instead of voting no, they just passed. Where is that straw going to be, Phil? Where do we get to the point that we actually have individuals say enough's enough?
I don't know, and that's when I was speaking of the straw, I was talking about the credit rating system. But I don't know with our with those in office when they will say, "Hey, we're actually going to cut spending." And if you listen to 100 pundits, and I'm not going to do that, but I would bet you that 50 of them would say what they're doing is going to cut spending. I would bet that. So a lot of these are projections. So when you say, think back to the original tax cuts in 2017. So we're going to bring in less revenue, and then there was an argument that that's going to increase our deficit, right? That was the first argument when the tax cuts came about. But the rebuttal to that was it's going to help people spend more money, so therefore we're going to bring in more with taxes and the like, and people will make more, and they're going to pay more taxes because they're going to make more, and all of those other rebuttals. And the proof in the pudding, I don't really know, because you could say, well, it didn't really work, but then you could argue COVID. So there's always a back and forth on whether something will work. And in most cases, especially when you had something like COVID right in the middle of it, did something actually work? And you can't really answer that definitively because of all those variables.
General question here, Phil, unless either of you have a specific question on the line that we were on before I change topics here.
Go ahead.
All right. So I've seen this pop up in financial pages, websites and such, and it's in regards to converting IRAs and 401ks from traditional to Roth as you get older. So, and then a lot of it starts with, I'm in my 60s. Does it make sense to convert my traditional to a Roth at this point at so many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars per year? I know everything depends on the situation, but in general, is that something worth doing as you are in retirement?
In general, it is based off of your tax return, and that's where we use our other professionals, and any client of ours knows if they have a CPA that we bug those CPAs to death with questions like this. But in general, and again, this is in general because I don't want to give personal financial advice. This is in general. If you look at your tax return and you have a opening in your current tax bracket, if it doesn't cause damage somewhere else, because what a Roth conversion is doing is you're converting taxable dollars into non-taxable dollars. There's a lot of rules that come along with this. The first rule that a lot of people don't realize, you don't have to be 59 and a half to do that. You can do that at the age of 25. We've even suggested it to someone that's around 30 years old that the wife had said, hey, I had a baby and I'm not going to work for the next 5 years. I'm going to stay home. And they're going to have reduced income, but they had significant assets that were tax deferred. Well, that's an opportunity because you're in a married filing joint tax return that you can now transfer those dollars from taxable to non-taxable. But along the way, you have to pay taxes.
You have to pay taxes at the time of the transfer?
You have to pay taxes in the following year. So on that tax is no different than a paycheck. So it's not 100% necessary that you do it at that moment, but you're going to owe some taxes. So we want to talk to the CPA. Should they do quarterlies? Should they just ante up with the IRS when they do their taxes with you? Is there a penalty involved if they don't pay the quarterlies? All those questions need to be answered, especially if it's a significant one. But when you're looking at a current, if it's a good tax bracket, if you're going to be in a 12%, or if you're right at the lip, or if you're in a 24% bracket, the next one's 32. So I don't want to jump up 8% just to do this. And I don't want to jump from a 12% to a 22%, because those are the huge increases that we're weary of. But if I'm in that and there's no other harm being done, then yeah, it's worth looking at if you've got the cash to pay the taxes. And now, if you're over 59 and a half, you can do tax withholdings on the conversion. There's a lot of ways we can look at that, but that is a way to get tax-free income in retirement, and that brings a lot of potential along with it. So, when you're looking at withdrawals in retirement, number one, those Roth dollars doesn't have a required minimum distribution, and anybody that has those, I'm sure they've got to grumble. They're grumbling right now because they don't really like them because they're mandatory and you have to pay taxes on them. We don't have those on Roth dollars as long as they're in an IRA. If they're a 401k, yes, but in an IRA, you don't have those required distributions because the government doesn't care. They're not getting a tax revenue from it, so they don't care. But that allows you to cover the unexpected expenses without throwing yourself into a higher tax bracket in retirement. So think of something really bad or really good that's going to cost you some money. When I say really good, it's like, oh, we're going to go to Hawaii, or I'm going to get a new Corvette, or whatever it may be. But if you're deriving the money to pay for that really good or really bad event from taxable dollars, that could throw you into a tax bracket that is much, much higher than what's necessary. But if you have ample Roth dollars, then you can accomplish that without changing your tax bracket, without impacting the taxability of your Social Security, without impacting how much you pay for your Medicare insurance. So there's a lot of benefit to having dollars in Roth, but there is a Band-Aid that needs to be ripped off at the moment that you do that when you pay taxes. It's just how much of that pain are you willing to inflict on yourself in order to get it from taxable to Roth. And once it's in Roth, though, baby, that's yours, and that's the best money you can have, and it's never going to be taxed, not to you or those who may inherit it.
Is it all or nothing? If somebody has a $200,000,
as much as you can stomach. So if you had a $200,000 IRA and you said, I'm going to do $5,000 conversions for the rest of my life and just pay the taxes on it and keep that taxable amount at a minimum, then you could do that. It's whatever you choose. You just need a lot of hand-holding to do that. You need someone like ourselves, not a shameless plug, but someone like ourselves to help you with that, to actually get it done, to move it from one to the other. And hopefully, a lot of cases we can look at the tax returns, but if we know the CPA really, really well, we're going to reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what I've come up with. Do you have any other thoughts, or are we going too much? Could we go more? And let them help us in that. We're not looking for financial advice from the CPAs. We're looking for them to direct us in what we're doing with those conversions and how much. God, help us with how much. And is there any reason? We've been stopped before. There's been a CPA that we use a lot. It's like, oh, wait. They got another source of income in 2025 or 2024, whatever the year, that we didn't expect. And then that kind of stops us in our tracks. So that's why we always reach out to those guys if we can.
Financial Phil, how do we get in touch with you for more Financial Phil type information?
You can reach us at 304-263-4343 or stop by and see us with an appointment at 1270 Winchester Avenue right here in Martinsburg.
Phil, have a great day.
Thank you, guys. Have a great week.
You too, sir.
See you, Phil.